These things came out of shoeboxes and closets just for us, and I was really honored that the museum was able to showcase this story and all these amazing objects that these women held on to because of their strong memories and associations with their time in Albany.
Welcome to The Object Itself, a podcast brought to you by the Albany Institute of History and Art. In each episode, we invite a guest to select one object from our collection or from an exhibition, an object that speaks to them in a unique way. With over 35,000 works in the Albany Institute's permanent collection and over 1 million items in special collections, each piece holds a story, a link to our past, a message for the future. What stories emerge when we devote our full attention to a single object? What contemporary resonances can be found within a 19th century landscape painting, a cast iron stove, a bed frame with feet carved in the shape of dolphins, a painted plaster figurine of Nipper, the RCA Victor dog? In this podcast, we'll delve into the rich histories and personal reflections that our guests bring to the table, revealing how these objects continue to inspire and connect us across time. Whether it's a Hudson River School painting, an antique chair, or an object from everyday life, we'll explore why it matters and what it tells us about our world, past and present. Join us as we take the time to look closer and appreciate the object itself. My guest today is Diane Shewchuk, who is a curator here at the Albany Institute. She first started here as the registrar, then after running the John J. Homestead State Historic Site and the Columbia County Historical Society, she returned to the Institute in 2015 as curator. Diane has curated over a dozen exhibitions at the Institute, including Enchanting Threads, The Art of Sally Maver, The Time Capsule, What We Found Under Philip Schuyler, It's a Wrap, 200 Years of Outerwear, The Schuyler Sisters and Their Circle, and Well Dressed in Victorian Albany, 19th Century Fashion from the Albany Institute, among many others. Personally, in the months that I've been here at the Institute, and as I've gotten to know Diane, her knowledge of the collection is vast, and her passion for the objects is really contagious. The way she tells stories through the collections is informative, while being entertaining and inviting, and often funny. I know she is going to be a repeat guest, so consider this just the beginning. Well, thanks, Diane, for joining me on the podcast today. I'm really excited to talk about the Tulip Queen Crown. Why don't we first start by, can you just describe, the object that we're looking at?
Yeah, this is an amazing thing in our collection. It's really a hand-wrought crown made in 1949 for the very first Tulip Queen that was crowned here in the city of Albany. It's completely made out of brass and copper, which is so not traditional for crowns. There's not a single jewel on it, and that was done deliberately to focus on the tulip. So it starts with a wide band of copper at the bottom, the closest part to your head, with two bands of like rope-turned trim, brass trim, that are attached to each end of the band. And then it kind of steps in a little bit. And then on top of that, there's a circlet of brass attached to which are 6 brass tulip flowers and copper leaves. And they're equally distantly spaced around the circlet. And then each leaf is bent as if it's an arm holding hands with the next tulip. So it's quite charming in simplicity because it's completely hand wrought. There are also these like brass buttons spaced around the circlet as well. Then inside the crown is a fur, probably rabbit fur, white fur, cap that's kind of attached to the crown with an ermine tail at the very center of the top of the crown, of the little fur part of it. So it's completely round. The center tulip at the front is a little taller than the other 5 tulips, to show you that is the front of the crown. It was made by George Righthand, and it was based on a design by Hajo Christoph of the Albany Artists Group.
And so this was the very first crown. Was this used for multiple tulip queens, or this was just kind of a one and done?
No, so the interesting thing about this crown is, like, I only had a Burger King crown growing up, so this is like every girl's little dream, really, to have this kind of crown. It was used for 10 years. So Joanne Coakley was the first tulip queen to wear it. She was 20 years old in 1949. For the first 2 years of the festival, there was also a tulip king. But then the Korean War started, and all the men went off to service.
Not enough kings around.
Not enough kings around. So then there's just the queen remained. But then after a while, it was altered a little bit. But then by 1959, it was deemed that the crown was just too heavy. It weighed about 3 pounds. It really impeded the young woman's balance and poise, because you'd wear this crown going off and doing all kinds of things, from ribbon cuttings to visiting children in hospitals to christening new ships named the USS Albany, visiting a submarine. They really wore this a lot. Also gave them a headache, because you're trying to balance in your high heels in the 1950s, your beautiful dress that you were awarded as part of your award package for being queen, and balancing this very, very heavy crown. So it was only in service for about 10 years. And then they switched to a silver one, which is not as dramatic as this one. This one's simpler but more elegant, because it does look like a piece of arts and crafts, decorative arts thing. It's really pretty amazing. So it was retired out of service. We're thrilled to have it in our collection to preserve it for future generations. We often take it out during the Tulip Festival because people always ask to see it. We also have the tulip scepter that they were carried around with them, which is a plastic tulip on a plastic stem that looks more like a magic wand with a tulip at the edge of it, and it's polychrome. This is only gold colored and brass colored, so there's no color that goes with this in this particular instance with this crown. I always love looking at it because I love picking it up. I work in a museum, so I have the great luxury of putting white gloves on and picking it up. It is pretty heavy. I've never tried it on. We don't do that, but it would be too heavy to wear that for an all-day event. So I can understand why they retired. I think now they just use little rhinestone tiaras they probably buy at a bridal boutique somewhere. And I'm sure that the queens now probably get to keep their crowns. But in this case, they were all borrowed. Our collection also includes 3 of their red velvet capes. They were all awarded a cape, a scepter, and some other jewelry they were given. The prize packages were pretty amazing back in the 1950s. I really know the most about the 1950s, the first decade of the festival, because we have the scrapbooks that the committee put together. And the scrapbooks are filled with newspaper articles and also programs from all the different luncheons the queen and her court attended, from the different ceremonies they participated in. They even saved matchbooks. People were saving matchbooks at the time. Smoking was a big deal. So all these things are pasted in these scrapbooks that really give you a slice of what Albany life was like during the 1950s. There are some cases they were awarded like Christian Dior gown one year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no, the queens were given a wardrobe, and their court was given a wardrobe. So they were matching, because when they would do photo shoots, they all looked like a bridal party, really, a queen and her entire court. And after, we have great photos from this period of time, after there were no more kings, they put a friendly Dutchman into service. So there was a young man would dress up as the friendly Dutchman to be the official escort for the Tulip Queen of Albany. He would make appearances, helping them get down the stairs. They were tottering in their high heels. So this crown can tell so many different stories, which is what I love about it.
I'm not from Albany, so I'm not used to this tradition. What are the origins of the Tulip Festival?
So this is a really heartfelt story, because Albany has a sister city, the city of Nijmegen in the Netherlands, which we still maintain a very strong relationship with. But in 1944, the city was bombed during World War II, and it was just devastated. The city center was devastated. And by 1947, there was a serviceman over there in Germany and in the Netherlands who decided that because Albany had Dutch roots, and he knew that Mayor Corning, at the time mayor of Albany, Mayor Erasmus Corning II, cared about the Dutch roots of Albany, that he asked the mayor to adopt the city of Nijmegen and provide war relief. So 200 or 300 tons of things were sent over there on a ship, everything from school desks to plate glass for windows, to food, to clothing, to cement. And in return, because the Dutch were so grateful for all the help to rebuild their city, they sent 2,000 tulip bulbs. They asked Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands to pick a specific bulb to be Albany's flower, and she picked a bulb called Orange Wonder. Orange Wonder is also because Fort Orange, it was a house of orange. Albany city flag has orange in it. So Orange Wonder was a tulip that is a darker shade of orange with a little bit of red in it. It is no longer in production. You can't buy an Orange Wonder tulip bulb, which is too bad. And that same year, so the tulip bulbs arrived in the fall of 1948. And Mayor Corning officially named the tulip the official flower of Albany that year. So since then, there's been a tulip festival. But now we have over 200,000 bulbs are planted, and I think 120 beds around the city of Albany. So back then it was primarily focused in Washington Park, where the first 2,000 bulbs were planted. So when the Tulip Festival first started, they were looking for young women between the ages of 16 and 25, were either students or professionals. And oftentimes these young women were working in the hospital industry, they were educators, teachers, or working in offices as clerks. So they would apply to be the Tulip Queen. At the beginning stages of the festival, the 3 judges were composed of the 2 editors of the fashion editors of the 2 local newspapers, the Knickerbocker News and the Times Union, along with a judge. So those 3 people decided on who would be crowned the Tulip Queen. And they were looking for someone that had poise and elegance, but also had a sense of humor and could talk about a different variety of topics. They wanted someone that could be as easily dealing with military soldiers on a submarine and also visiting children in the local hospitals, which was a big part of their duty because they were community ambassadors for the city of Albany. And one of the judges even said that this is the Tulip Queen should be someone that any guy would want to marry. It's such a 1950s kind of quote because they were given prizes also that included like sets of china. So you can set the perfect hostess table in the 1950s. Again, I can only really speak to the 50s the most because that's when we have the most artifacts related to that decade in particular. Yeah, so since then, the Tulip Queen has been, I don't even really know who they are right now. I mean, I think you can apply to be a Tulip Queen. Right now, there's a committee that asks them questions. We've had the questioning part of the selection process here at the museum sometimes, so you can hear what kinds of questions they ask now. But in the 70s, because we did meet a number of Tulip Queens, they would be asked things about like, how do you feel about the women's rights movement? So the questions have changed over time but there's still much kind of a beauty pageant with some intellectual sort of knowledge thrown in and current events knowledge definitely thrown in.
So what was the inspiration behind organizing the exhibition in 2023?
So in 2023, the city of Albany was celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Tulip Festival, and we have a very close relationship with the mayor's office. And I asked the mayor if she thought it would be appropriate if we did a tulip exhibition here. And we also still have a close ties to the folks in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. This institution does, the museum does, the mayor's office has ties to people in Nijmegen. We knew that the mayor of Nijmegen was coming to visit Albany for the 75th anniversary. We knew that our collection had enough. We wanted to get the people who love our costume collection, we wanted to get the capes out, the 2 crowns, the scepter. And so that was the impetus to start thinking about the exhibition. But then as I started reading through the scrapbooks, I realized that we needed to know so much more. So we started to track down the retired queens, the people that had served, only to find out, which was so very exciting for me, that many of them from the 70s and 80s still had their gowns in their closet. So we were able to borrow the official Tulip Queen's gowns, one from the 70s and one from the 1980s, to put on display that year. Then we tracked some other queens down that still had some of the pendants in their own collection, in their drawers, that they were happy to lend us. And in the end, one actually gave her pendant to us, which we didn't have. It was also a great way to develop more collections for us, to try to acquire many more things of the sacred, beloved Festival of Albany. So that's what really happened. And we also wanted to show what's happening at the festival today. So the City of Albany's Cultural Affairs Department came up with a whole box of photographs and programs for the festival for the past probably 20 years, which were a lot of fun to go through, to pick out the different photos. We created a giant collage on the wall of maybe 100 photos showing everything from children listening to the band. They crown a best mom of the year now every year. So we had photos of the best mom. We had photos of the parades in the park, the food vendors, the craft vendors, and people just enjoying 3 beautiful days of sunshine in Albany's glorious Washington Park.
I saw one photo. It looks like a 2-story tall tulip, like some of the props and decorations.
Yeah, so early on, because the tulips are planted all over the city, not just in the park, back in the 60s and 70s, they also have props around the park. So it was one giant tulip that was created as sort of like an entrance to the city. I can't remember the date on that, but I know that photograph. All those early photographs are black and white, a lot of them. So we can't imagine how colorful the festival was because the tulips, there's so many different colors. And now we look at those photos of the 50s, and having these artifacts allows us to peek into what colors were popular, what survived. The red velvets of the capes are so beautiful. They're so plush. Some of them have rabbit trim. It's everything a little girl would want when she was crowned a queen.
Was there anything too, when you were going through the scrapbooks, you mentioned the matchbooks and things like that, anything that stood out, like unexpected?
Yeah, actually, that's so interesting. So what was really great is the queens attend a lot of different luncheons and dinners. And in some cases, the menus were saved, and the menus were printed in both Dutch and English. which still surprised me in the 1970s. So that the Albany's Dutch heritage has never really faded in Albany. So to see the menus printed in both languages was pretty amazing to me. It was amazing to me that they also, the queens sometimes got trips to Europe as gifts, and they traveled more than they travel today, afar and abroad, to represent the city. They would go to a Navy yard if a submarine was being christened related to the history of the city of Albany, and they would visit with the sailors, and then the sailors would come here. So they had a very active life as ambassadors, not only the queen, but the members of her court as well.
And for the exhibition, I imagine it was a big local draw.
Oh my gosh, the opening party was huge because they had just crowned the new queen of 2023. So she was here with her court, and all the past queens were here, and all the lenders to the show, which were also past queens, were here. Court members were here. Relatives of people in the photographs in the 50s were here. It was such a fun, big party. And we also had a lot of the people from the parks department of the city here, because they're the ones that plant the tulips. We also borrowed quite a bit from the city gardener, because the city gardener is the one that plants all the tulips and develops all the plans. So we're able to show that the festival is still at its roots about the tulips, which I didn't want anybody to forget, because part of the exhibition was about the actual tulip bulbs and the planting of the tulips. So we had massive and massive amounts of tulips and vases everywhere, and we had regional food and regional brewers. It was one of the nicest parties the museum's had, because people of all ages were here. It lasted a long time. It was hard to get all the queens out because they're their own little sorority, and they all want to talk to each other about their experience, because there's still a tulip ball and a tulip luncheon every year. So they were sharing all their stories with each other. It would have been fun to have a camera here with like a microphone to record all their memories, because it was such an important part of these young women's lives, because oftentimes there was scholarship money involved.
Right, and I think it's a testament too that it was such a key moment in their life that they saved, their outfit, they saved the pendant, they saved, all of the ephemera surrounding when they were crowned queen.
Yeah, we love the scrapbooks. They sadly use some of the scrapbooks from the 80s that aren't archivally correct, but it's so great to see what they see. They literally had their own like clipping services sometimes to clip all the articles about themselves. And these things came out of shoeboxes and closets just for us. And I was really honored that the museum was able to showcase this story and all these amazing objects that these women kept held on to because of their strong memories and associations with their time in Albany.
That's the perfect segue to, as curator at the Albany Institute, and as part of my agenda with this podcast about, spending a dedicated amount of time just talking about one object, just the crown and all of the stories that it tells. Could you, I guess, just from your own perspective, describe the importance of really looking and spending time with a work of art or an object from the past?
So I believe in the power of the authentic thing. So when I look at something that's real or it captures an important figure, an important story in somebody's life, it really resonates with me, because it's still all about the people and stories that we can tell by looking at these objects. These objects are three-dimensional manifestations of people, of stories, of moments in time or special events in the history of our region, because we are truly a museum of the Upper Hudson Valley and the Capital Region. So when I touch a document, or even the questions that the Tulip Queen was asked in the 1970s, it kind of places me back in that time period to think about how that person felt being asked the questions, how she would have responded. And it leads me to think about what else is happening in the world. I think museums are the best place to go to get authentic facts and to learn about our American history as a whole. And these objects, like I said, we tell stories with objects. If we don't have the object, it's harder for us to tell a story. You might as well sit home and read a book. But come to the museum to see the cool things, because we love them. We love to showcase them. And we love to tell you all about them.
There are so many more. I mean, I have a feeling, Diane, that you're going to be a repeat guest on the podcast. I mean, this obviously for the occasion of the Tulip Festival, but, just the endless stories in our collections that you tell so well. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you. It's been great fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Object Itself with Diane Shewchuk. Be sure to check out the information in the show notes about the Tulip Queen Crown and the 2023 exhibition. You can browse hundreds of other objects from our collection through our online database, as well as look back at past exhibitions. Enjoy the Tulip Festival and savor spring, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of The Object Itself.